Okay.
Hello, everybody. We are going to get started here in just a second. I'm just sharing to a couple groups, you guys, this morning. If you guys can, as you're listening and coming in, make sure you share this amazing conversation today. I'm super excited about it. Everybody that's coming in, I'm just sharing, you guys, right now. So I am sharing this to a bunch of groups that I work with. Right. I think we got them all. Sorry, y'all. I keep telling y'all I need to get somebody on the tech side of this, but I got to take this moment so that I can get this done, and then we can focus in our conversation. All right. We did it. Right at the end of the song, perfect timing. So for those that don't know, that was Sounds of Blackness, Optimistic. That's one of my favorite songs because I think a lot of times when you are talking about things that are extremely, they can be almost overwhelming, you know, and it's like, what do we do? Where do we go? How can we be optimistic about making change in our community? And I think that's what this conversation is all about today. Hey, Alex. You know, I will say this much. This conversation around health disparities in the Black community has been so eye-opening, you guys. If you have not been watching this series, please go and check it out. You can look at us on Spotify. And we have been highlighting sickle cell anemia because this is something that we need to talk more about. A lot of people, even people who are in the Black community that have been impacted by just the trait, sickle cell trait, really don't know very much about it. And usually we learn about it when something happens. So we have a lot of different podcasts around that, but I want to say welcome everybody to the Learning Project. I have Dr. Jeanne Baynes. You guys, I just love her so much. I have been a fan of Dr. Jeanne Baynes for a long time, very much growing up as a little girl. I keep talking about, I don't know how I'm going to do it, Dr. Baynes, but I keep saying there was like a group of women when I grew up that I remember you guys doing stuff in the community. And I just feel like you and so many others were the trailblazers and gave a lot of the younger generation like that permission and view and idea how to do things, where to go, how to be a mom. Like I'm sitting here and my new life as a mom, I'm like, how are you a mom and you did all these things? We just saw a lot of these phenomenal women just do stuff and you're not realizing what they actually experienced until you're at that point in the same journey that they once were. So welcome to the Learning Project. I truly appreciate you for taking this Saturday morning out to come and talk with us and build our knowledge as a community and really figure out what we need to do. What we hope to do with this conversation is that you use it to, one, empower yourself, educate yourself, but also take this information back to your companies, to your communities, and start having real conversations about what can we do to improve healthcare and really decrease the health disparities and eliminate the health disparities that are impacting the Black community. We know that there are so many other health disparities that are impacting different communities, but today we're going to just be focusing in on the Black community. And so we have some really great topics, and Dr. Jeanne Baynes is going to be bringing the fire. So I'm really excited. Thank you so much. So for those that don't know you, Dr. Baynes, can you please tell us a little bit about who are you? Everybody knows that you're like a professor, you do a lot of different things, but tell us a little bit about who are you and how did you get in this work?
Of course, I am a professor at Eastern Washington University in the Africana Studies Department. I've taught courses, especially courses that related to the African American family, African American women, and I enjoy those courses. But you said, how do I get into this work? I'm a mother, and I thank you, Stephanie, for those compliments. You know, your mother, of course, was and still is a trailblazer, and I looked up to her and many other women. But we took an interest in our community, especially our youth. I said, I'm a mother, raised 2 young adult children. I was a single parent when my young son was 8 years old. So I was motivated because my parents inspired us to be good parents and, pursue education and uplift the community. We should always give back to our community.
Yes.
So I'm interested in this work because I see the disparities in not only our health system. We can look at educational criminal justice, we can look at a lot of areas, employment. So basically being a Black woman and have had barriers and dealt with some health disparities. Today, it doesn't matter your class, if you have insurance, it doesn't matter if your conditions are severe, like people in the dominant group, we are still discriminated against. So I think because I'm a mother, an educator, I've been an educator. I was in Spokane Public Schools for years and then went out to Eastern. So mother, Black woman, when Anna Julian Cooper said that she said double jeopardy. And then another person came out with the triple jeopardy. We are Black women. And people look at our class too. It doesn't matter if you're middle class, although the middle class is decreasing. They tend to discriminate against Black females, more so than any other group.
You hit it right on the head, and thank you so much for that introduction. I think a lot of times we can get caught up on like just the title, and we don't realize the different intersections of a person and how they got there. And so thank you so much for just sharing who you are and how you got into this work. So I came to you and I was like, I would love to do a podcast with you about health disparities that are impacting Black women. And I wanted to ask you the first question: what does health disparities impacting Black women mean to you? And why is this something that we really need to understand?
Okay, first, thank you, Miss Stephanie. I'm going to start with the historical context, because health disparities, we look at the Black community, have been due to systemic racism and institutional, structural. We lack access to health care services. We also have to deal with implicit and explicit biases of our physicians. And when we look at the impact of the Black community, we look at a research or a report by the National Academy of Medicine. They said Black people do not receive the quality care as their white counterparts. They receive inefficient care based on their race. And if you are in the lower class, it's even worse. So I look at that, and we are more inclined to die from cancer, heart disease, diabetes than any other group. Yeah. Based on our race. So when I look in terms, and also there was a report on a survey by 400 hospitals, and they said Black patients received a cheaper treatment. Wow. Older and conservative and in what? Well, we could talk about lack of quality, but just poor treatment than their white counterparts. They are discharged from hospitals earlier than their white counterparts. So that was a survey by 400 hospitals. It's even worse in states like Mississippi, Louisiana, and Texas. But Spokane County, you go on their website, Regional Health County, they said that there's disparities in health, the quality of health between African Americans, of course, Native Americans, and your Hispanic Americans and the white counterparts. Now we can get into the women. I explained to you about my, about Anna Julian Cooper's quote. That was in the 1800 or the end of the 19th century. In the 19th century. And I think if we look at the historical context with women, they view us as, viewed us as being less than. Yes. Back to Dr. Marion Sims, the father of gynecology, who experimented on Black women, slave women, without any anesthesia, because he felt that we endured pain. We could endure pain. They experimented on our babies. He had 30 experiments that killed enslaved women. And before he would operate on white women, he would experiment on these Black slave women. So I think it's partly historical. Yeah. And then we look at Black women today with our cancer. We could talk about breast cancer and maternal morbidity. I can't talk. Mortality rate. Morbidity, mortality rate. We look at breast cancer. Black women do not get breast cancer at a high rate as white women, but we die earlier or more than white women.
Can I just put a pin in that real quick? Because when you explained that to me and I was reading over that, I was like, what? This is exactly why I wanted to highlight the issues that are taking place in the birth spaces. Black women are 3 to 4 more times likely to die due to pregnancy complications, and 60% of them are preventable.
They're preventable.
The conversation that I think people neglect to have is when you solve one problem for one group, that solution impacts everybody else. And because we won't confront those problems and really say, what is the solution? In some communities, I think Spokane is kind of coming to this awakening. I would say Washington State. Washington State they're kind of in this awakening moment, and they're doing a lot of unconventional things to get to know people's stories, such as using lived experiences, bringing real people to the table, asking people what do they need, confronting the medical community, maybe not as direct as some of us would like, but they're having conversations that other communities are refusing to have. And when you had talked to me about how Black women are, they're not more like, they're not as high, they don't have a high rate of getting cancer, but they're more likely to die. The question goes back to access. I think you also brought this up too. Mm-hmm. When we're talking about access of care, when we're talking about access to healthcare, and then feeling like it's a human right, it goes right back to this conversation that you just ended with, which is Black women being used as experiments to better or further the medical community.
But you also made a great point about addressing and bringing people to the table, because many of our physicians have, they did an implicit bias survey, and many associate positive qualities with their white patients, as opposed to how they view us as someone, like we said, less than, don't have the means to even ask questions about their health. But some of them dismiss us as if we are uneducated, even when we are educated. When we get to, now I can say it now, the maternal mortality rate. I had spent, like you said, 3 or 4 times more likely to die. Let me give you some names. And it doesn't matter what class. You know, you and I talked about, like, my daughter's experience with her pregnancy. You know, Black women, even if they're having complications, they are not a priority. Let's see, I have it right here. First of all, Maddie Oden, founder of the Tasha Oden French Memorial Foundation, lists her pregnant daughter, lost her in 2001. So our maternal mortality rate is higher because we are not viewed as, you're not a priority. Kira Dixon Johnson, 39, died in 2016. She is was the daughter-in-law of Judge Glenda Hatchett. And their hospital was Mount Sinai, Cedars-Sinai Hospital in Los Angeles. And the doctor, when he told the doctor his wife was bleeding, hemorrhaging, he said, she's not a priority. This woman died. I could go on. Dr. Shalon Irving, 36, died in 2017, 3 weeks after giving birth to her daughter, Soleil. She was regarded, anyway, this is an example of how structural inequality affects health and outcomes. It's a public health issue. We have another one, Yolanda Kadima, 35, died in 2020. That's only 2 years ago, 3 days after the C-section delivery of her twins. She left behind a husband and 7 children. Amber Rose Isaac died in 2020 after an emergency C-section. And even if you listen to Serena Williams had complications, Beyonce, Cardi B, we could go on down the list. And these are women with money. But they're Black women.
Yes.
So And when we say breast cancer, we tell people to get a mammogram. See, white women have been diagnosed with breast cancer sometimes, not always, at 50 or older. Ours is earlier. Don't tell me I need a mammogram at 40. We should have mammograms prior to that. I just lost a dear friend who graduated from Washington State University, lived in Texas. She was in her 30s. She died from breast cancer. This is Texas. So, we really must support one another. We really must demand more from our physicians in terms of, they need to be culturally trained, responsibly trained like they're doing in the schools.
Yes.
Because they view Black people in a different limelight.
Absolutely.
It's all stereotypes. We are more inclined to be diagnosed with like diabetes, something very not superficial, than cardiac heart disease. And they'll diagnose hypertension in a minute. But what about some other issues I have?
Right. I have to say this conversation for some of you guys, it is like, what? Like, I didn't know this, or it may be like almost like a fog as you're listening to this, because we're not having the real conversations. When we talk about racism, when we talk about systems that are broken, when we talk about systems that are embedded in white supremacy or racism or these different terms that everybody uses, right? When it comes down to it, if we take all of the terms away and we look at how Black people have been seen from the beginning, they were not seen as humans. If we look at exactly what you were talking about, being experimented on, and then, being products of these practice procedures. And then we look on, even during birth, we weren't even able to give birth in the hospitals. So when we weren't able to give birth in the hospitals, we were moved to the basements of the hospitals, and then we were eventually moved to the floors of the hospitals. And so when we talk about these different pieces that are broken, many of these people that have experienced the system, or even just ourselves, we've experienced some of these systems, and I've highlighted different stories from all over the country, people telling their experiences within hospitals and their experience getting treatment and help. A lot of times we're not confronting the truth, which is this is not long time ago. A lot of people are alive that went through these different phases. When we talk about Tuskegee, when we talk about all of these different people are still alive, well and kicking. And so if we have to look at what people experience and the problems, we've got to bring it to the table and say, what do we need to do to make a difference? What do we need to do to make these changes? And I think one of the things that you also had mentioned was this earlier access to screening, and really allowing people to petition and to be heard when they're telling people, I want this type of care, or I'm requesting this type of care. And really figuring out a way to help us equalize the type of care that we need and we want and we all deserve. In the last series that we had podcast with Keely, and she was talking about sickle cell anemia, as well as we have another one with Lisa Gardner. You guys will see that. It's phenomenal. Both of them mention early screening. Like, that is something that is simple. How do we provide early screening? How do we petition for those things? And how do we access for those things? But a lot of times people don't even know that they can request that, or what they can ask for or not ask for, because we've been told, one, as women, I know your body better than you do. Even though that doctor has seen you for 5 minutes, there's no one that's really invested in your personal interests and health and journey. And it's not to say people are out here just being whatever, but they can't. We haven't set up a system that really is invested in healthcare. We are just fixing things. And so when we talk about these early access to care screening, we have to educate each other and educate each other through conversation and knowledge. And so when you had mentioned Serena and you had mentioned Beyonce and Cardi B and all of these people with money that we would think like, oh, they don't have these problems. They don't have these struggles. They wouldn't have these inequities that are taking place. What is it that we need to do as a community to really say, we need to change this? Where do we fix this broken system? Like, what are some of your thoughts or recommendations on that?
I don't know, that's a hard one because it's been, over how many years, but I feel that, the conversations like these, and when I look at organizations like the NAACP podcasts and in our institutions, we need to have webinars for the community on what to do. Like you said, the physician that sees you for 5 minutes, he shouldn't be your physician, or he can't look you in the eye. My physician will ask me about my children. How are they doing? We have to have a conversation.
Yes.
I also feel that, we must encourage our youth to get into the healthcare system. Not only as physicians, nurses, but we need psychologists, psychiatrists. We need to expand that, because if you look at, the impact of COVID on people of color, African Americans, the people of color, you look at some of the jobs, they're out in the first responders, they're getting that COVID. We need people who can treat our people in a better way, a proper way.
Yes.
And I think it comes with encouraging our youth and we have to invest in them as a community to get into our science fields, our health field, the mental health, because with mental health, many Black people do not trust white counselors or psychologists, but we have many people who are experiencing not only depression, but other areas of, suicide in the Black community was never at a high rate. Lately, after COVID, we see an increase in it with the young people.
Yeah.
So I just feel that we need, like you said, we need to be more supportive. We need to have not only have mentors, but a listening ear for people who say, hey, I'm dealing with this, or my physician gave me a prescription that the pharmacist said was incorrect. I've heard a pharmacist say, I had to call the physician because I questioned this prescription. So what I'm saying is, we just need, they say it takes a village.
Yep.
We need to be a more effective village, especially in Spokane.
Yes.
And we need to look out for our elderly. They're being preyed upon. And, I talk about the youth, but I just feel that as a community, we need to come together and really actively listen and support our community.
Yes.
And encourage our youth to get into these fields, When I was coming up, it was always education. Today, like my son is a pharmacist. We can see astronauts. We can physicians, nurses. We need those areas. You look at how many Black physicians we have. They have more in the South. But like you said, Stephanie, we need to recruit them to Spokane. But how supportive is our community?
There it is. There it is. That was so good. Y'all, if you did not hear any of that, or it was too much, to rewind that, bring it back. If you know somebody that needs to hear that, stop this podcast and send it to them right now, because you are hitting the meat of our community's issues too.
Yes.
And when we're talking about the level of change that we need to make, it has to start with the individual community. I have had just a strong heart burden for the Black community here in Spokane, because I feel like we're missing so much. And I realize there's a lot of people doing things, but no one is we're not seeing each other, right? There's this lack of visibility. And so I've been really focusing on how do we create different ways to connect content, just taking some learning opportunities together and cheer each other on and celebrate each other's goals and accomplishments. And that doesn't mean that other people can't be a part of it. However, we are talking about a community that really has some work to do and healing work. And we can't do that work all the time in certain spaces because we don't have access to providers that look like us. I think one of the things that really blew my mind this last year when I was reading all this stuff, I was reading a book that was actually focusing on like why the Black community has such a distrust with counselors and psychiatrists. Back in the day, y'all, there was a, it was called, just had it on my tongue and I forgot it. It's called runaway slave syndrome.
Right.
So if you kept running away from your slave master, you were diagnosed with this symptom. When I heard this, I was like, what?
I know the name begins with a D, right?
Yes.
I know the name of it. Let's see if I can look it up. Yes.
Please do.
Dr. Cartwright, I think, came up with that because they thought we were mentally imbalanced if we did not want to stay in that slave environment.
Yes.
I'll look it up.
Okay, yes. And so as Dr. Baynes is
drapetomania, I think it's drapetomania.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Go, Doctor. Dr. Baynes got it.
Hey, listen, my memory is not as sharp, but I remember that.
You know what? After having my baby, like sometimes my mind, it gets kind of fuzzy, but it's there. And so when we're talking about the healthcare system, you can literally pinpoint all of these different disparities, iniquities, or not iniquities, which is, it is kind of like a sin what's happening, but all these different broken pieces that impacted the Black community and how they connect. But a lot of people don't even know the historical context, or Black people know certain things about it, but they don't have the words or the story to explain what they feel and what was passed down knowledge to them. And so in order for us to move forward as a community, and in order for us to really connect as a community, I think you're absolutely right. We have some work, educational work that must be done in our community. And then on top of that, we have the work that needs to be done within our medical community. I always share this story about my daughter and I going to her doctor's appointment, and one of the doctors had a student doctor there, and she has like a Mongolian mark on her back. Now, for me, that when I saw that on my daughter's back, it scared me because they know there's a history of children of color being taken away from their families because that mark looked like they had been beaten or there was a bruise. And so people didn't realize what it was. So we're in this doctor's appointment and the intern says, "Oh, what's that on her back?" And I looked at her like,
yes.
What did you just ask? And she was like, and the doctor said, "Oh, it's a Mongolian mark. Did you not have you never seen one of those?" And she goes, "No, I never learned about that in school."
Of course not.
I was like, what? So these are I'm like, what kind of classes are we teaching? Are we still perpetuating the same canon that is very Eurocentric? Or are we really saying, let's include everybody into this conversation? Let's get everybody's health history or health history so that we can be more knowledgeable about why is this mother responding to you not knowing about this, right? Do we expect doctors, nurses, medical community to know everything? No. But the things that matter, the things that bring your eyes wide open, those are the conversations we need to continually have, and not just on that level of passing by, but really understanding the historical root of what is happening and how it's impacting and shaping and making the two communities actually come together. And so I had to share that as you were talking about this, because, or finding that word, because it goes so much deeper than what we actually realize.
I want to say, I'm not interrupting you.
No, this is perfect. Okay. This is exactly how it's supposed to go. And if you have to interrupt, because it's good.
I want to say, when I first came to Spokane, I had fibroids. That's another area that these white physicians lack knowledge, because the physician wanted to give me a hysterectomy. Of course, we're going to call our mothers. I called my mama. My mother called that physician and said, she's young. Can't you operate? Can't you give her medication? Do something. He wanted to give me a hysterectomy.
Wow.
That was before I had my 2 children. Imagine.
Wow.
So this is why I say we must have conversations. If someone gives you a diagnosis of cancer or heart disease, you need to seek out another person, another, what I want to say.
Get a second opinion.
Second opinion. Yeah. You want to get somebody else and get a specialist.
Yeah.
Because many times, like sickle cell anemia, fibroids, and I shared a story with Miss Stephanie here about a lady who has a scar on her and it's so dark, he didn't come out and say that, but he didn't know what it was. So she's going to go to Atlanta to seek out another physician,
wow.
A person, a Black or a person of color who is more knowledgeable. It takes research. Our nation is not going to be dominantly white. White privilege is dominant, it's rampant. However, your children's population, it's the browning of America. The Hispanics will be on the same, and then we look at percentages, in 2030 or 40.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So our nation is changing in terms of race, or if you want to call race, because it's a social construct, but our cultures are different. So our physicians, the health community, need to research. Like you said, if I had fibroids, he need to get on there and call somebody, or get on the internet and read about it.
Yes.
And maybe they should have a hookup with some of those Black doctors in the Black community. So, so they just need to expand their knowledge, and some don't want to.
No.
Because your life isn't valued. That's how I feel. It's just not valued.
Absolutely. If everyone else has to change, we have to change as a community. We have to push ourselves. And then also too, there's a level of healing that has to be done. And healing is uncomfortable. I actually, this morning, I journal. I try to journal at least 4 times a week. And I was reading something on self-love. And I told myself, I want to push myself into my healing journey, not for perfection, but for correction.
Right.
And when we are in that healing space and we are confronting the love of medicine or the love of counseling or psychiatry or education, whatever system you are in, and if it is a broken system, the system that you love is the one you're going to have to confront. And it can't be about protecting the perfection of the community. It has to go deeper for the correction that needs to take place so that we can really move forward and be able to say, this is what our history has been, but this is the vision and where the future will be going, because we are all committed to this journey and all committed to this path. Does that mean we're going to be perfect? Does that mean that we're going to make the right decisions each time? No, but it's being in a place where you are okay to show your ignorance, and it's okay for you to say, teach me so that I can learn. There's a difference when you're coming into a situation and you are open to learning, but there's a whole nother situation when you're like, nope, that's just how it is, and I'm not changing, and I don't care how they feel. They need to put on their hard armor and move forward. We have had a lot of people in the medical community that have really been hurt and really been damaged. Even when we look at within the birthing field, 50,000 women have been impacted in some negative traumatic way. So this might be them being cut unnecessarily, infections, trauma. And then we look a little bit further down and you look at the group of women that have died, and they have 700 women that die a year due to pregnancy complications. And then you go even further in that, and it's like Black women are 3 or 4 times more likely to die during childbirth or pregnancy related sector. And they find that 60% of this is preventable. So when we look at all these health disparities and we break them down, the question we keep asking ourselves is, what do we need to do to change? Where do we start? Where do we go? And what I think Dr. Jeanne Baynes, you are doing for us right now is giving us some practical solutions. And one of the solutions I literally was thinking about when you were talking is about us understanding the power of things in writing and the power
Right.
of exchanging information. So one of the things that I have been really talking a lot about is that power of the my chart. So a lot of people do not use their my chart, which is your chart that is online and it's digital, and it's a communication between you and your doctor and the doctor's offices that you work with. And it is one of the ways that you can document your historical history of your medical condition. So if you call your doctor and you say, hey, I am not feeling good, can I come in for a checkup? You know, making sure that when you have your checkup, you go right back into that my chart and you do a follow-up and say, thank you so much for meeting with me today. I told you my concern was this was your recommendation. I picked up my medications and now I am resting. Thank you so much for this conversation. Documentation is crucial. And also too, it gives us a paper trail of what people are able to communicate about their body. Also too, looking up how people are describing things about their body and you using that exact language, or even copying and pasting it into the my chart and saying, these are the symptoms that I'm feeling with this situation. Sometimes it's hard to find like exactly what you're feeling. There was a study done about transgender people, and they were saying like they have one of the highest language banquets for their body knowledge because they focus so much on their body and what's happening. But people who do not have that experience, it's really hard for them to explain what's going on with their body because we are very anti-body stuff, which is we don't talk about our body parts. It's a shameful thing to talk about, show our body parts, talk about our body parts. And so it really builds this wall, which it can be a barrier in our language and how we're talking about what our bodies are experiencing and what we need. And so using some of those tactics to help you build a language, to help you understand what you're feeling and how you can communicate, I think it's extremely important. And it's important to the point it could cost you your life. Dr. Jeanne Baynes, so tell me a little bit more. So we talked a little bit about, you know, some of the health disparities. We've talked about individuals that have gone through some of these things. What's the one thing that you feel like we're missing in this conversation that you feel like we should absolutely highlight?
Well, there's a couple of things. I know we talked about breast cancer. You know, Black women are 2 times more likely to die from breast cancer. And we get mammograms, but we still should do a self examination. The one lady who said she had a mammogram, but then a week later she felt a lump. So do that self evaluation. Even if you do get a mammogram, you should get one. I don't know what the age is, get it every year, but you know, you should get one more frequently than your doctor recommends. I also want to talk about obesity.
That's
because, you know, in the Black community, having a little weight on us, you know, we're proud of it.
Right.
However, you know, we have to look at the impact on our health because we should be eating more nutritiously. And, you know, years ago when the slaves had to eat whatever, they made a meal out of nothing because they got scraps. Now we talk about soul food. Now you can, and I love soul food too, but you can cook with reducing those saturated fats.
Yes.
You know, we can cook. We know that the food, and we're going to eat it Thanksgiving and Christmas, but we need to be more cognizant about our diets and our health, especially with the heart.
Yes.
And then, of course, getting diabetes because it affects your organs, your eyes. With melanin, you know, many women say, well, you know, I'm protected against the sun. Well, in the winter, there's no sun. So you need to take vitamin D. You need to take vitamin B12. Take your vitamins. Even though I forget sometimes, but I feel better when I take my vitamins. So, you know, we talked about all those areas, all the areas, Stephanie, you touched upon it. But we must take control of our diets. I'm not saying not to eat.
Yes.
I have to give up cheesecake sometimes and that sweet potato pie. However, exercise and just be more aware of what you're putting into your temple, your body, because you need to be around for your family.
You know what? I heard somebody said soul food's the only food that costs you your soul.
Yes. Yes.
And it was playing on this idea exactly what you're talking about, which is sometimes the foods that touch our soul are not the ones that are going, they're going to help you get to your soul.
They want to get to your soul, right.
But go ahead.
No, go ahead. I just feel that we must revisit because, we're going to eat at Thanksgiving and Christmas. I mean, because, my family will cook and they want to give you dessert and everything. I said, I just had lunch and then went to eat dinner. But, then I say after that, a couple of days after that, I have to cut down and eat more nutritiously. Because I don't want to have a limb, because they'll cut your limbs in a minute. They may not. They'll cut your limbs in a minute. You go and research and see how many Black men have had their limbs cut. Or also dialysis. They don't want to give us the true or the quality treatment for dialysis or transplants. They'll do it with the white, our white counterpart, but not with us. So therefore, that's why we must look at our diets. Okay.
Yes. Oh,
so that's important.
It is.
Especially when you get older, you get 60, you really need to think, hey, I want to live longer because I have friends who are dying because of their diets.
Yes. So one of the things that comes to mind, if you guys have not read this book called Medical Apartheid.
Oh, wonderful book. Yes.
I said, I wish I could interview that lady. So I'm told to put her on my wish list to interview. I cannot think of her name, last name White. Is it Dr. I can't remember her first name, but Dr. White, I believe it's her last name.
I can't remember. I have the book in my office,
Okay, you guys, you have got to read this book. My sister actually got me onto this book. And in her book, she talks a lot about different movements of the medical community that impacted Black people. And one of the things that she shared was she did an audit on a hospital, and she found that the Black medical files were 10 times skinnier, smaller than white people. And she was like, what is going on? And it's literally the same person with the same diagnosis, but they weren't getting the same treatment. And so when we talk about, I'm going to look that up real quick because that is going to drive me crazy. So when we, what is her name? Harriet Washington, Dr.
Yes, that's her name. I was trying to look it up too.
I know. I'm like, what is her name? But Dr. Washington, she did this her own study and couldn't believe what she was seeing. And when she was saying this stuff, I couldn't even believe what I was hearing. So a couple things that you had said that really caught my eye and made me think about my own medical journey. One, fibroids. It's something that's really overlooked. It can cause infertility. It can cause you to have miscarriages. They can grow and you don't even know what's going on. I had fibroids and they freaked me out. And I still have it. And one of the things that I had told my doctor, I was like, I don't understand why no one has done a follow-up to see, how big my fibroids are, if they grew, if they didn't, because I would like to have another child and that can impact that. And again, that early intervention screening, what are we doing? How are we moving forth with treatment? Second thing I would like to just bring up, I talk a lot about this with my own personal experience. I had gestational diabetes. And this is where I got the real reality check, Dr. Baynes, about diabetes, because I was like, okay, you hear about it, but when you actually have to give yourself insulin, you have to watch how you eat. There are so many things, like this is just a time consuming disorder. And to me, or disease. And to me, when I was starting off on this, I didn't meet with anybody. And they actually printed off a book and then gave it to me. Because of COVID, their dietitians were moved to another department. They weren't really available. I was like, so you're going to give me insulin. I haven't met with a dietitian. nutritionist, anything. And I'm just expected to know what's going on. And luckily, my dad has diabetes and my mother-in-law is a nurse, and they were like, no, you need to know what to do. But she was like, this is something that can kill you if you don't do this right. And I was in a situation where I'm grateful that I had people in my life, but I'm like, what if I wouldn't have known anybody? Who would I have gone to? Where would I have gone? Who would I have talked to about this? And then when you're talking about even just like receiving the right care, and I think one of the gaps that we don't value enough in the medical community is having that one-on-one conversation and journey with somebody. Being able to sit with somebody and say, hey, I'm going through this. I'm not sure how I'm supposed to navigate this. Can I talk to you? A lot of times doctors and nurses don't have that space. Like, that expectation is so unfair for them. But if they have another teammate that's like, hey, I can meet with you once a week and actually talk to you about what's going on and what kind of intervention plans and what kind of things we can put together. And then we will communicate that with the doctor if the doctor or nurse cannot meet with you or whatever it may be. I don't know how this would work, but my idea would be is really having somebody that you can journey with through your health. And that way you can look back at whatever diagnosis that you've had and you've been like, I have fought a really good fight with this situation and I have done everything possible in my power to make sure that I was making the right medical choices for myself. Dr. Baynes, what's the one last message you want our listeners to hear today about health disparities impacting the Black community? Or maybe you have something that you'd like to say that has nothing to do with that, but it's going to bring value. Like, what would you say?
I just want to refer to the American Apartheid book, and I know someone at Eastern teaches that class. But with Black women, you go and read the biographies of Black women like Fannie Lou Hamer. You know, they gave her a hysterectomy without even telling her.
Yes.
I'm looking at Henrietta Lacks, went to the Johns Hopkins University with I think a tumor on her cervix. And she ended up dying, but they used her cells for cancer.
Yes.
For researching cancer, and didn't give her family anything. And so I'm just saying that, and Stephanie has said, and Miss Courtney, that we just need to journal our health. We need to discuss it. Some women don't like to discuss their health with somebody else, but you must find someone else to discuss your health with. Yes. I had a miscarriage because of fibroids. And, but anyway, I just want to say that we need to start. I love reading biographies. So I read Fannie Lou Hamer. I mean, her life was, but listen, as Black women, we don't care. We have barriers, but we're going to fight to the very end. Henrietta Lacks, I mean, and then a medical apartheid, how they disperse infected mosquitoes in Florida, and they didn't care. Who was our target? Us.
Yes.
But I also want to say one last thing, because we could all be on here forever.
No, please. We have time. We have time.
Good. COVID. When I hear Blacks or African Americans say they don't want to take the vaccination because of history, Tuskegee, but that was targets for us. With the COVID, we really need to look at how to protect ourselves and our families. And if you haven't received the vaccination, I didn't want to either. I hear people say no, because, they're experimenting on us. No, we have to really be wise and think this is something that's impacting the world. And we want to get our vaccination, our booster shots, so we can protect not only ourselves, but our family. And there was one other thing I wanted to say about, I can't even think about, it'll come to me, go ahead. Because I just feel we just need to read.
Yes.
Learn our history. We look at our history, how our ancestors endured, that just inspires me to be a lifelong learner.
Yeah.
I don't care how old I get. I'm going to read, and I'm going to assist another Black woman who needs just having a listening ear.
Yes.
And with the suicide rates, we need to make sure that if someone is thinking about it or in a depression state, that we get them the help they need.
Oh, that part right there is like a conversation in itself, y'all.
Yes, that's another conversation.
Medical care is one area, but the healthcare or mental health care, that's a whole nother segment, because a lot of people of color have not had, it is a privilege, it's a luxury, and many people don't know how to even tap into it. They don't know how to take control of it. They don't know how to heal that part. And I always remind people, like, sometimes we're not just healing. I think this is everybody's journey, but because we're talking about the Black community, I want to say this. Sometimes we're not just healing our own trauma. We are actually healing generational trauma.
Yeah.
It's yes, please, Dr. Jeanne.
Dr. Joy DeGroot. Generational trauma and that healing. She wrote the book, The Legacy, Enduring Legacy of Healing. You know, right? We're still in the healing stage.
Yes. And I think sometimes there are things going on with people and they're like, why am I having these experiences? And we're not looking at how the generational healing must take place and how we need to tap into that, and we need to really focus on that, and that's going to be a part of our journey. And we need to think back on, you know, our families, our mothers, our fathers, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, this thing goes back and back and back, and we have so much work to do. But hopefully some of these strategies and some of these conversations that are coming up, they really make you think about what you need to do and how you can be active in the community to make effective change. And I really encourage you guys to check out The Medical Apartheid by Dr. Harriet Washington. It is phenomenal. Some of her videos are hardcore. They will bring a lot of light into your knowledge and understanding, so that you can understand better what is the issue, where is the gap. This conversation is really just to help highlight some of the health disparities that are impacting the Black community, and what can we do about it, and how much knowledge do we have about something, and how can we pass that knowledge on. Dr. Jeanne Baynes, thank you so much for being here.
I just feel honored that you asked me, and because you have a lot of respect in the community, you and your mother, and I wish you well with these podcasts, because you said it's a series which is highly needed. Highly needed.
Yes, thank you so much. And I want to thank everybody for watching. Please remember to share. You know my motto, don't give somebody candy or flowers. Give them a podcast. Send them a podcast. Let them know that you are thinking about them, that you are ready to help feed their mind, soul, body, spirit, so that they can truly heal and gain knowledge, so that they can pass it on to someone else and empower the people that they love. Until next time, you guys, see you soon. Bye. Thank you again, Dr.